Module 5, Unit 3, Using Access Controls. In this unit, our objective is to distinguish between identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting used in access control systems. All of these are still about security, basic security in IT systems, and we will also identify different authentication factors and understand how they are used and their use in providing strong authentication. And we will also list the best practices when choosing passwords. This is about managing passwords that we will that supposedly the recommended best practice. I mean recommended practices in managing passwords. So we will also explain how encryption technologies are used for authentication and access control. Guys, when we say access controls, it's a system that regulates and manages how it is being used and accessed. So, in a control system, in access control system specifically, meron tinatawag na subjects and objects. The subjects are the users, computers, and organizations. And the objects are the devices na ginagamit and the methods being applied when implementing or creating an access control system. Meron ding tinatawag na access control list. Ito yung rules or procedures or policies associated with either with user or with devices or a combination to regulate how files are being accessed, how users will have permissions in accessing a file or computer or devices within the network. Those are things, no? It follows an access control procedure. So may mga listing yan, whether at different level or at different conditions. And then when we say access control system, now there are four main processes that is always being considered, starting from identification. Normal ito na it's important na every device or every account that is part of the network may mga corresponding ID, may corresponding account. Walang mga sinatawag na rogue account or rogue ID, meaning rogue account yung mga unidentified ID, no, or undefined account, because it is considered as a foreign subject, no? It is not part of it's an alien, no? It's not part of the system being created. And how will you be able to create an access control kung undefined? There's no ID being created. So associated dyan, so every user or any process that will part of the computer system. And then when it comes to authentication, this is about providing an evidence or proving the subject who or what it claims to be. So parang meron bang evidence, meron bang validation na this guy is actually the guy that who is claiming to be. And the same thing goes with every object or every subject that is part of the system. When we say authorization, this is about giving rights and permissions, whether for example sa isang file, a right to read, write, access, create, or modify, or share. And permissions in a sense that, for example, you're accessing a folder, a directory, or a device in the network na you can actually print or scan or share. So, yun ang authorization doon. There should be some sort of level of permissions na enforce na hindi equal ang hindi equal ang bawat object or bawat subject in the system, hindi equal ang restrictions, hindi equal ang ang access. Otherwise, walang limitations, walang regulations. Magulo. And then when we say accounting naman, this is about tracking the record. as simple as it is accounting na ina-audit kung sino yung mga ano yung mga ID na create, anong authentication meron, and who are being authorized, on what member you being part. That is a process na it's always been taken into account when it comes to access control list. Now, meron din tinatawag na least privilege and implicit deny. Usually, ito yung sa mga when it comes to creating accounts, when giving permissions. When we say least privilege, ito yung minimal permissions that you can grant. Hindi yung allow all or and then no no restrictions. Yung minimal, yung pinaka requirement lang, and then as few as possible. So you can monitor, you can regulate, and then it's easy to track as well. The other one is implicit deny. This is about yung every deny or denied permission should be identified, and it's not according to the default, no? Kasi meron mga deny by fault and meron namang deny all by default. So instead of allowing all by default, it's better to have it implicit deny, no? Na by default, most of the time everything is denied, and then you'll just identify the type of service, identify the type of account na bibigyan mo ng mga permissions. So that way it's a lot easier than allowing all and then i-deny mo bawat isa, which is actually you don't utilize the entire resources after all, no? Hindi mo naman nagagamit lahat yan hindi naman nagagamit lahat ng services and resources. Fraction lang yan. Depende pa sa user and purpose. Now, when it comes to access controls, yung authorization alone, may mga access models. May mga different kinds of access control, like starting with discretionary access control. When we say discretionary access control, yung owner itself, siya ang may full control to do whatever he wants, no, to share, to restrict, to hide, everything, and no one can supersede when it comes to ownership and full control except the owner itself. Yung owner, ito yung, for example, ito yung who created the file originally, who created the folder originally, yun ang owner. So that type of access control is discretionary. Nasa kanya yun kung whether to give you permission or denial for certain access. And then yung role-based naman is a type of access control na relates to your role, relates to the account's role, whether a high-level role or standard roles or guest roles. Kung ikaw ay guest role, so yung mga minimum restrictions, minimum permissions just to use as the computer resources in a simple way. Yung mga high-level roles na just like administrators, yon may mga ibang mga type of roles that they could do sometimes ay mga admin level, walang restrictions. So those are kind of access control na identified through the type of role. And then meron naman yung mga tinatawag na mandatory access control. These are based on the security clearance levels. This is actually based on, for example, level of employment or level of access that you will be granted, level of clearance na you are only allowed, whether high clearance or low level. So if a high level mandatory, ano dapat yan? Yung mga permissions yan is high level din. Things like that. And then meron naman yung rule-based. Ito yung something like there's a condition. No, there's a parameters requirements na if you meet a certain level of condition, you belong to that access control. So like for example, if your account belongs to this group, Then you have this access control. If your computer belongs to this location or to this group again, it has a different set of access controls. So rule-based yun. There is a certain procedure and policies, and then the control is implemented to any subject that is part of the system, either a user or any devices. Meron ding term when it comes to accounting, yung accounting itself and non-repudiation. When we say accounting, as mentioned earlier, ito yung in-audit, yung activities, in-audit yung yung user activities, device performance, device status, and then yung mga nag-create ng log yan. So it records every activity related to user or any subject that is part of the system. Accounting yun. Pati mismo yung restrictions, na audit din yan na this user is being allowed to access this and that. Or this device is somehow can be seen by group and this group. So lahat yun audited. Nalalag at the same time. At a certain period of time, or in a given period of time, no, or unlimited, or logging all the time at all. And then yung non-repudiation, meaning it's something that it cannot be denied. Once sinabing it belongs to you or it is you, there's an evidence, there's an authorization na it cannot be denied. No, hindi masabing hindi ikaw yun. So ito yung mga example, like for example, a video. So it's obvious na kung sino yung nasa video and he claims to be that person. So there's no way na he can like switch it, manipulate the evidence na to deny his claim. The same thing with biometrics kasi it's very unique. Every fingerprint, unique yan. Yung retina scan, it's unique. So as the signature. But somehow, and signature is a little more secure when it comes to biometrics, but still when we say signature, it should be unique and distinct. So something na sinabing signature ko yan eh, so no one can claim that and it cannot be related to somebody else. Otherwise hindi signature tawag doon. And receipts, like when you purchase something, meron ka receipt, so that's an evidence. They cannot deny na hindi mo binili yan or it doesn't belong to you. The same thing applies when it comes to accounting or access control. So when we say account types, no, or user account types, may mga classifications and factors to consider. That yung account types, no, that's why it's being important kasi it ensures the identity, no, it guarantees the identity of anyone using the computer. And then when you log in, it should be validated. So yun ang klase ng account type. That and this it's not any ID na walang confirmation when you log in. And then meron tinatawag na account types na mandatory login, meaning it has to be there. There's nothing you can do about it, no. It's similar to Windows default accounts. Yung when you boot up a station, yung unang account, it's mandatory, and usually yun na rin ang administrator. And then merong always guest. Yung mga modern Windows version, disabled itong guest. You have to enable it to set up a guest account. Before, automatic, anybody can log in as well. They will allow you. So, these are default Windows accounts that we need to be aware. And the role it will create sa mga account na created during setup. And then when creating additional accounts, there should be only one administrator. The rest is standard users. Not unless it is important na yung user has to do some changes that requires administrators or administrator level access, then that's the only time na ilalagay mo, i-assign mo siya or isasama mo siya sa administrators or administrators group. Just speaking about group accounts, no, groups and group accounts, ito yung a certain account that needs membership in order to grant privileges. Like for example, admin group, that's a group account, and a user group like John, Peter, no, will not be an admin unless i-assign mo siya as a member of that group. So By default, ang Windows, merong administrator groups, and then merong standard users group. So when you create a user, of course, a user should not be generic. Whether you assign it as administrators, depende sa role niya and responsibilities, or a standard user with minimum requirements, no, just to do the basic task. And that's all. And that's recommended. That's all you need to do. Ganun lang kailangan. And then when it comes to authentication, these are the things that that we need to understand. Authentication like something you know. When we say something you know, it's something that na ikaw lang as a user na identifiable to you and no one else knows about it. It's another way of authentication, no? These are authentication factors in validating a user credential. So something you know are the examples like password, no, or passphrase, or the PIN number. Of course, like sa ATM banks, di ba? PIN number mo is you're the only one who knows it, di ba? And then either you lock it by pattern. That is something. It's an example of something you know. Any ID, personal identifiable information, or security questions like what's your nickname when you're a kid or what city you were born. That is an example of something you know. And when it comes to authentication, meron ding tinatawag na something you have. This is something you possess, like a hardware token. Itong hardware token like smart card or key fobs or mga one-time token generators, yung OTP kung tawagin, na it generates a key number na you're the only one who knows it. Now, when you press the button, it will generate a number when a different number whenever you press it, and then i-enter mo yan as an authentication. And another one is, instead of a hardware token issued to you, ipapadala pa nila sa'yo, lalo na pag if you are working remote or you're working from another region, is through software. Ini-install naman tong token generator. No, either through your phone or through your smartphone, and then it will be automatically accessed and activated, sending you tokens, and those are the codes na you will enter. And it generates a cookie as well. A cookie is similar to internet cookies na may mga logs or tracks ng inyong activity. So this meron kasing software token then na that is also called as a cookie, hindi yung internet cookie itself. And another factor, authentication factor, is something you are. This is about unique. I mean, that's an identifiable uh, authentication na only pertains to you physically. Ito yung example ng biometric recognition systems. So, from fingerprint, iris, retina, or yung facial features, yung face ID, those are biometric recognition na that actually defines or identifies something unique about you. That's why it said something you are. And then may mga confirmation yan, of course, yung itong mga biometric data into the system to confirm your identity, to authenticate your identity as you use your biometrics. And then of course, ang one consideration here is privacy. That yung information mo associated with biometric data is is intact and no one has have the access. That's why it's very critical sa mga in IT system and IT practitioners that privacy is a very important consideration, because it could create a false positive or false negative. False positive meaning it confirms your identity in a wrong way na hindi naman pala ikaw yon. False negative is that denying yung access mo, which is actually you. The data and the name belong, and the biometric data belongs to you actually, and then it is not allowing you. So false negative naman tawag doon. And when it comes to something you are, it also include when with your position, geographically, you are determined with, your authentication on what region you are through like through GPS, no? It identifies your exact location or in their positioning system, ito yung mga within the building, no? And then the other one is yung IP mo is related to geographic location. If you have an ID that belongs to Quezon City and then all of a sudden you move to another city, you'll have another IP. So it will confirm with you na, or it will tell the system na to verify na is it really you or somebody else from another location. So, yung mga geographic location yan is associated with IP address in a given range. Think of it like a area code when it comes to phone number. Area codes pertains to a certain location. No, those are numbers, part ng phone numbers. The first three digit usually, meron pa country code, di ba? The first digit with the plus sign, it pertains to a country. The same thing with IP address. It makes sense na every location may mga designated subnet range or at IP address range. So, something you are is a continuous authentication and access control. Meaning it's dynamic, data should be updated, and for example, if it is geographic, instantaneous din yan. Now, when it comes to authentication, probably you have heard yung multi-factor or two-factor. From the word itself, it's pretty straightforward. Now, when a user needs authentication, it's a two-stage process, or more than that, multi-factor na. Two-factor in a sense na as you log in on a computer, the system will send you a code, no, through your phone or through your email, and then enter it after you enter the password. So you had to prove your identity twice. The next one is if there's another form of verification aside from sending a code and then you use your face aside after you log in. So that's three. You verified yourself three times. Kaya multi-factor na, and then there are cases na it takes more than three. Kaya multiple times. Depending sa application na that requires high level of security, no? Kaya may mga ganon. So that would really, ensure, authentication in a secure way. Now, guys, meron din naman tinatawag na single sign-on. This is not about authentication, but this is about an account that is used to access different devices or services. Like for example, once you log in, you've been authenticated, and you access a different, like for example, a portal, a company portal. No, you don't have to enter your password again. You don't have to enter validation again. So automatically, ma-access mo kagad yung certain file or folder or a website or an intranet. So yun ang ibig sabihin ng single sign-on. So don't confuse with multiple authentications with single sign-on. Again, yung multiple authentication, twice mo ipoprove yung sarili mo. Pero in single sign-on, once you prove yourself and you sign in, it's the same account that's being used to access the multiple services. So in Windows, that type of authentication, yung single sign-on, is called Kerberos. Take note of that. And then sa Microsoft account naman, when you log in, di ba, it's an example of single sign-on. When you have a Microsoft account, di ba, that you log into your computer, it's the same account that we'll use to access your Microsoft resources like Microsoft Office sa cloud services. The same, you don't have to log in again. Sa sa access controls, very important ang encryption. When we say encryption, ito yung mga encoded data that you need to decode with an encryption key para maging readable. So this is a type of protection na if data is being stolen, nobody else will be able to read it. No one will be able to use it because it's encrypted. So when a data is also being set in a public network, kailangan din mayroong confidentiality. Ito naman yung tinatawag na encrypted channel. That is also essential sa access controls. So yung authentication between sender and receiver, That's important. Either in a plain text na yun nga lang, hindi siya encrypted, but that's another way to authenticate. Kung ano yung code na pinadala or combination of characters, it's the same thing should be entered at the receiver end. And the more secure way is to use a ciphertext, an encrypted message to between sender and receiver to authenticate yung message. And then yung cipher kasi, may mga algorithm. When we say algorithm, is a mathematical process to generate an encrypted message. And the same algorithm to decrypt a message. So, it's not like, scrambling it in any way that we want. So, may pattern yan. And in a mathematical way, ang tawag doon, algorithm. So, meron ding type of encryption na yung hashing. Hashing in a sense that ang ibig sabihin nito is you are representing the data differently. Like for example, A is actually hashed to be represented by D itself or a combination of D9. So when we say D9, yun ang alam natin. So we don't know what it represents except the cryptographic code to create the hash. And then meron ding symmetric encryption and asymmetric encryption that we will always hear when it comes to encryption technology. So when we say symmetric, I mean encryption, it is the key to create an encrypted message is a secret key. It's the same key when encrypting and decrypting. So you need to ensure that you're using the same secret key. Otherwise, you will not be able to decrypt the message. So it is fast, but it's difficult to distribute because it's the same key. Kung ma-compromise ang secret key, madi-decrypt ng iba yung message. So it needs to be na ma-deliver ang secret key securely as well. So usually, ginagamit ito for data storage and network transmission. And the common ciphers na categorized as symmetric is 3DES, Advanced Encryption System, RC, IDEA, Blowfish. These are the things that you need to be just familiar with. And then the key size itself is symmetric, belongs to symmetric. It matters. Unlike symmetric encryption, there are two keys, public and private. No, the sender can tell the recipient the public key. When we say public key, it's not secret. So, but the recipient can use the public key to encrypt the message, pero hindi madi-decrypt. Ang sender lang ang ma-decrypt nun. Yun naman is associated with the private key. Private key na siya lang ang may hawak nun ng key na yun. So this is applied in small amounts of data. But ang essence dito is yung distribution ng secret key is na-solve. It is distributed more secure than symmetric. So sometimes yung asymmetric encryption to encrypt is used to encrypt asymmetric secret key. Yung key mismo ng symmetric encryption is being encrypted by asymmetric encryption and use a symmetric key to encode the larger message. In other words, it's a combination. Yung message is symmetrically encrypted, but yung key is asymmetric, or the other way around. Asymmetric ang data, but yung key is symmetrical encryption. May two levels of encryption. And only the recipient is always can decrypt the secret key. And then, saka lang decrypt yung message. Now, meron ding tinatawag sa access control yung tinatawag na public key infrastructure. It is a system actually to authenticate all the subjects. Again, when we say subjects, ito yung mga users and computers, and to authenticate them in a public network from the word itself. No? And then, itong mga subject na to, itong mga users and computers na to, they are issued with a digital certificates. As explained from the previous slide, ito yung mga birth certificate ng subjects. And then validated by the certificate authority in NSO kung i-compare sa Philippines. NSO, sila may hawak niyan. And then, they are responsible for validating or verifying the identity of the subject. So, in digital certificate, meron niyang public key of course. Meron ding encryption yan that belongs to the subject, that belongs to the user and computers. So once the client, trust the certificate authorities, so to do that, kailangan i-install mo yung root certificate. Once you have the root certificate, you trust the CA, so everything about the subject, the digital certificate coming with the subject is also trusted. So ito yung mga ginagamit sa mga smart card authentication. And then mostly is yung asymmetric encryption na ginagamit dito is based on RSA cipher. Now, digital signatures are also used in access controls. Of course, definitely from the name itself, these are your signatures, no, that being saved in the system. Aside from digital certificates, kasama sa digital signatures, those are in combination used for authentication and of course confidentiality. And these are also the digital signatures used for authentication and integrity naman. So here, it's the private key. When we say private key, it's only the sender or an individual knows the key. And that's the key being used to encrypt a message or to encrypt a signature. And then yung public key naman is used to decrypt it. So, two keys pa rin, it's asymmetric. Now, when we say cryptographic hashes naman, as I've explained earlier, ito yung tinatransform yung data into another. So, technically, it creates a fixed length of string from a variable amount of data. So, that's another way to say it na kino-convert mo yung message into another. It is represented by another character. So, yung cryptographic hash functions is designed with the following properties, no? It is not possible to recover information about the original data. That's one. And the other one is dapat walang collation by considering no two data inputs to create a hash value. Kung mag-create ka ng code, if you are doing hashing, walang dalawang keys, ibig sabihin yan. And then, in cryptographic hashes, yung sender, ang mag-create ng hash, no? Hash message and encrypts the hash with an asymmetric encryption private key. So usually, itong encrypted private key kasama rin sa message as a digital signature. Now, yung receiver or recipient can use the public key issued by CA to decrypt the signature muna and validate the hash. Yung hash na yun is performed by their own hash to prove that yung receiver is that the recipient created the message and then hindi na bago o na compromise while it is being transferred or while in transit. So, typically, ito yung mga ginagamit sa mga storing password. And the algorithm is used here for your information is secure hash algorithm 1 and 2 and MD5, which is message digest ciphers. Now, sa access controls, it is also important yung data status and the data while in transit, no? So, in data status, in data states, merong tinatawag na at rest. When we say at rest, ito yung mga, take it literally, no, na it's the one being saved on your hard disk or in your storage media, kahit ba na USB drive yan or external drive. Ayan yung nakasave lang. Yun ang mga tawag ng data at rest. So may mga encryption dyan. It's either the whole disk is encrypted, or yung mobile device is in data within it's encrypted. Meron ding database encryption, or even just at the file or folder level encryption. Pwedeng yun lang encrypted, hindi, it doesn't have to be the entire disk. And then there's another data na at in transit naman. Ito yung in motion. Ito yung transmitted over the network. Ito yung bit in within the communication channel. So, merong encryption din dyan. And the one being used there is yung SSL, in secure sockets layer, and the TLS, the transport layer security. Yan ang secure protocol being used sa mga data to remain encrypted while in the network. And another one is yung VPN, Virtual Private Network. Ito naman is a network connection, a network channel between two sites, or between 2 points, between two computers, or from computer to another network. Ang channel between them is encrypted, and that is a private virtual network. Kahit ba may marites dyan in between, hindi sila maintindihan because that is a secure encrypted channel. Now, we have to be aware as well na ang password can be cracked, no? Ibig sabihin, pwedeng, this is what we say, yung password being hacked, no? Na-decode ang password, or na-stolen, no? So, or in one way to steal it is yung in-intercept from the network. May mga marites, I keep on saying this, no? May mga nakikinig sa network. All they have to do is keep their wireless network open and using a protocol analyzer, and then marites na yon. They could sniff password. They could tell if it is encrypted or not, and they're looking for a plain text password na they could try to use. So, and then password can be obtained as well from mga files or databases. If your database or files are not encrypted, so pwedeng ma-scan, and pwedeng makakuha din ng password na ginagamit mo. There are also software na ginagamit to crack a password. And to decrypt a password hashes, two methods ang popular dyan. Yung one is dictionary approach, which is it is using the words, no, that is commonly found in a dictionary. A combination, any word from there, that's one. And the second one is randomly entering a combination of words to crack the password. Brute force naman ang tawag doon. Talagang enter ka na enter, hula ka na hula, but that is being done electronically or through a software. Now, when it comes to password management naman, the best practices to consider are important, starting from using long passwords. Huwag naman yung 3-letter word, no, o kaya one word, no, as simple as maximum 5. Those are, very easy to crack. Kaya it is recommended to use long ones. And the other one is put some complexity. Like, for example, hindi yung dictionary words na yung correct spelling. For example, your name na meron, yung albawa, yung A. Instead of A, use a symbol at. So, instead of E, use a symbol 3. Parang ganun ba? And instead of O, use 0. Ganon. Or if you use 0, write it down instead, or combine it with the character. So may mga combination of alphanumeric, and symbol characters. And then there are phrases. When we say phrases, combination of words na easy to remember, like hit and run, di ba? Hit and then end yung symbol and then run. That's a little bit complicated than using long password, di ba? A simple combination word. So, and then samahan pa ng alphanumeric, that's even better. Ang hirap mahulaan yon. And then, another important thing is the simplest one. Do not share passwords. No matter how your friend beg, or no matter how desperate the person is, do not share it. Don't share the passwords. No. It's not practical, and it's very, not good, di ba? And then, one of the best practices, lalo sa mga admin, is to change the password periodically. Like, quarterly, it doesn't have to be every day. It depends, no? Na Some highly secured areas, maybe, yeah. But on personal use, you have to change it once in a while. That is one of the best practices. And then, each account should have a unique password. Hindi dapat mayroong similarity or sa ang dami-dami na account, isang password lang ginagamit mo. So, that's very, very, unrecommended, no? Now, meron din mga password keepers or password managers. They call it password managers or fillers, and password that you can reset. Now, to manage a password, there are softwares that instead of writing it down, merong software to save your password in an encrypted way, in a encoded way. And then there are password na, we can store with multiple credentials for secure submission to websites. Eh, yung ibig sabihin, hindi lang isang credential to confirm a password, to authenticate the user. And another one is meron dapat na password reset mechanism. Ito, makikita to usually when creating a new account. So merong dapat may password. And then once the user activated yung account niya, it will tell him it will prompt her na to enter a new password. Yun, password reset. And meron namang reset na nag-expire ang password a certain period of time that will tell you na automatically to change your password. So in this unit, we have learned to distinguish between identification, authentication, authorization, and accounting that are used in access control systems. And then we also identify the different authentication factors and understand their use, to provide a secure and strong authentication. We also list down the best practices while or when creating a password. And then we also explain how encryption technologies are used for authentication and access control. I hope this has been informative to you. See you on the next unit.